In this video, we're going to look at how to work through this particular problem called Python with a little Japanese style cat face, I believe. The learning that we've done prior to this is really about how we can multiply values, printing multiple values of something that are text. So we've looked at how multiplication works with numbers, which is fairly straightforward. The multiplication symbol in Python is the asterisk symbol on our keyboard. I've also looked at how we can multiply text, or basically how we can get multiple copies of text and how that works. So if you haven't done the learning in here, of course, please make sure you go back and do it. But let's have a look at this question here. So the first thing is we're being asked a question. Okay, we're being asked a question here, and we can see that we're being asked a question and we expect to get a number at the end. So we're going to start with our question that we always have. Now, I can see that we're getting a number, so I'm going to put this variable name, I'm going to call that number, and it's going to be equal to my input statement. And again, I like to open and close my brackets straight away. I then like to open and close my quotation marks on my text straight away. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to copy the prompt that I'm required to have, including the space that it wants. And I'm going to put that in my text. So that way I have the correct prompt coming up. So if I run this right now, you'll see I get the correct prompt and I can press 1 for the first example. And so far that line's working. However, there's one more thing I do need to do, and we learned about it in the learning prior, and that is I want to convert this input from a string, which input always gives you a string, into an actual number that I can use. And that's a very important thing to have this learning at this point, is that input always gives you text. So it doesn't matter that I've typed the number 1, the input command is returning that into the variable as the text of 1. Okay, so we can't use text in a multiplication normally. So I couldn't do this number multiply a different number because it would say this is text. So again, if that's not making sense yet, please go back and those circles before this question and really go over them again to make sure you understand that. But to convert this into a number that I can actually use, I'm going to do this in a second step now, and then I'll show you how you can make it a bit smaller. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say number, my variable, is equal to the integer. Int stands for integer. And integer, you probably know from maths anyway, just means a number, a whole number in fact. So there's no decimal place to this. It's just a whole number. And I open that brackets, and then I can put in the text that I want. So in this case, the text I actually want is in the variable number from before. So what's happening here is I get the text that's been got by the input and store it in number. Then I quickly come down here and say, take that text in number, turn it into an integer, and put it back in my variable number. So now my variable number has the actual number version of that. So the number 1, the number 7, the number 10. Okay, not the text of it, but the number. So you can do it like this, and there's nothing wrong with that, or you can just do it straight away at the top. So I could actually wrap this input into that integer. Okay, so I'm getting the same steps here, and this is just a neater way to always do it. Okay, so you think about, just like in maths, you solve the inside bracket first. So I'm solving this input, I'm getting the input from the user, and then whatever value that is that they've typed in as text, it's now being converted into an integer by being wrapped up in there, and then it's being put into my variable number. It just saves a line of code. It's a little bit neater to understand, and you're doing it straight away, so you don't forget to do it later on if you do it in a separate way. Sometimes that wouldn't be the best option, and I won't go into those now, but in most of the cases in these questions that we're doing here in Python, if you're asking for a number, you're best off just doing it this way and getting your number straight away. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to do is work out how many of these lines I need between the little up arrow bits, so the little mouth, if you like, of the cat. Sorry. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to create a variable called lines. Again, it could be called anything, but I'm using a variable name that kind of makes sense for what's going to be inside it. And that's going to be equal to that underscore character as text. And I'm going to multiply that by the number I got from the user above. Whoops, I spelled that wrong. Like that, okay? And what we've learned in those learnings earlier, those circles, is that if we multiply some text by a number, we essentially duplicate that text that many times. So what's going to end up in my lines variable is this underscore character, however many times they wrote up the top. Okay, so if I put the number 1 in, I'll only get one of these characters. If I put the number 2 in, I'll get 2 of these characters because that line duplicated or multiplied by 2. If I put 100 in, I'll get 100 of these lines all joined together in this lines variable. Okay. The third stage is down to output that to the user, and I've learned how to print and join things together several times by now, so that's just a print command. So I'm going to have my print command, and as you've seen me do before, I do like to set it up straight away. So the first part of my print command that doesn't change is that first up up facing arrow. It's the Shift 6 on your keyboard. So there's the first part. I want to join onto that just using the plus, the value saved in that line, so how many lines I've calculated above, and then I need to do another plus and another one of those up arrow facing things. So essentially what I have here is the little first up arrow, the lines that I want to join them together, and the closing up arrow to match the examples over here. If I run that program now, we should see it working. So there is the prompt correctly because I copied and pasted it, including that space after the colon. Let's try the number 1 to begin with. And yep, I'm getting the correct face. So I have the up arrow pointing thing, 1 line because we've only multiplied by 1, and another closing one, so that's correct. Let's make sure we try the second example, which was the number 3. Yep, that looks good. And just for fun, let's try it one more time with 100. And there we go, a really big long one. So that is the process for solving this problem. First thing, of course, was getting in the number and making sure you do have it as an integer, as a number that can be used. The core part, the new part, if you like, was understanding that if we multiply text, or a string, we should say, by a number, we essentially duplicate it that many times. And of course, we just print that out using skills that we've learned earlier. So hopefully this has helped you with that question and you fully understand. If not, again, watch it a few more times, go back over the learning until this does make sense for you.